here with Cosmic Human Design, and I wanted to share with you today a little theory I have about some of the different terms that are used in human design and the gene keys, and how they relate to each other, which I find extremely interesting and fascinating. So if you are into human design or the gene keys, you probably have heard the term not self. Similarly, with the gene keys, you probably heard the term the shadow. And I in Cosmic Human Design talk a lot about the ego. Now, I believe that these are essentially three different names for the same thing: the shadow, the not self, and the ego. So we're going to look at um, these three different things and yeah, maybe come up with some interesting ideas here. So let's take a look at the not self. What is the not self exactly? So we have here a little definition. I think it's from the site humandesignprojectors.com or something like that. So let's read this here. What is the not self? Not self behaviors are rooted in strategies that your mind develops in order to try to become, change, fix, or deal with the openness. And by the way, your not self in human design is generally what's referred to as your open centers, or where you're not defined. For example, things like proving yourself, pretending to be certain, avoiding confrontation and truth, or holding on to things that aren't good for you. Aptly named, the not self consists of a set of behaviors that are predictable depending on your particular human design. What can happen is that not self mind chatter can arise from the openness and take you away from your true self. In other words, your mind can develop habitual internal dialogue, comparing yourself with others and outside expectations, which can cause you to agonize about what you should do or who you'd rather be. Your mind's self-talk can then lead to decision-making based on that inconsistent energy present in your openness. Witness the not-self in action. Your not-self mind can place emphasis on what you think or what others think is best for you. And then your mind makes not-self decisions based on those thoughts. Anytime you make decisions with your conditioned mind, you lose touch with your true self. When you live your life out of not-self conditioning based on what your mind is attracted to, pulled towards, and conditioned by, in other words, what is not you, your decisions will be out of alignment with your human design. When you make decisions due to outside energy that is not consistent within you, nor in alignment with the energy that is unique in you, this can be the source of a great deal of frustration, bitterness, disappointment, and anger in your life. So basically, the not self is, everything that's not you, and it's where you have an open center or undefined channel, and all the gates also have not self themes, and all the centers have not self themes. So that's a brief review of the not self. Let's look at the shadow. And remember, the gene keys operates in three frequencies: the shadow, the gift, and the city. And generally, the world right now is in kind of a shadow consciousness, and we have been for a while. I think we're breaking free of that, but basically the shadow is this oppressive kind of dark side consciousness. Let's read the definition of the shadow here from Richard Rudd's Glossary of Empowerment. Shadow, which is a frequency, the frequency band relating to all human suffering. The shadow frequency band emerges from ancient wiring in the human brain. Such wiring is based on individual survival and is linked directly to fear. The unconscious presence of fear in our system continues to enhance our belief that we're separate from the world around us. This deep-seated belief propagates a victim mentality. Since the moment we believe we're separate, we feel vulnerable and at the mercy of outside forces. When we live at the shadow frequency band, then we live within a culture of blame and shame. We blame those forces and people that we believe are outside us, and we feel shame when we believe we alone are responsible for our lives. Once you begin to understand how the shadow frequency controls the majority of people in the world, including yourself, you realize how simple it is to move out of its grasp. Simply by shifting your attitude, you release the creative currents hidden within the shadow frequencies, and your life takes on a higher purpose. Your very suffering becomes a source of your salvation. Thus begins your journey away from those internal patterns and traits that keep you believing you're a victim, and towards the inherent genius and love that is your true nature. So basically, the shadow frequency is kind of this frequency that we become trapped in. And it's due to a lot of things, such as Richard alludes to, such as the belief that we are separate from each other, that we're not connected, that we are, on our own, so to say, and is responsible for all kinds of blame, shame, and guilt, and all kinds of other negative emotions, such as in Gene Key 60, limitation is the shadow. So yeah, at first it might not be obvious that the shadow and not self are related, but I believe they're both basically talking about the same thing, and I believe that thing is the ego. The ego, which in I Ching Oracle, the Cosmic Way, is outlined very precisely. Let's read about the ego. In consulting the traditional I Ching over a period of years, one has shown that the ego is not a natural part of the personality. It is rather a false mental program that flatters a person to think of himself as special on the one hand, while telling him he is lacking in the most essential ways on the other. Hierarchically organized, one part of the program consists of a list of flattering self-images the person can develop, which he is told will make up for the list of essential qualities that he purportedly lacks. He is told that he can refine them to suit his individuality. This enables the program to speak in his psyche as I. Once the program is fully installed, he will even defend it as his individuality. So this is a computer-like program that is essentially a virus that corrupts the true self, and that is instituted by a variety of means. For example, just as the collective ego sets itself up in competition with the cosmos, and remember the collective ego is our collective ego, based on the beliefs, for example, that humans are the center of the universe, that humans are special because they can use language, and all kinds, and the belief that we're separated into parts, such as mind, body, and spirit, and the belief that there's no one to help us but ourselves, the belief that we have to rely on the institutions of society for help, the covering up of the existence of the invisible world of consciousness, which exists in everyone and everything. So yeah, the ego is set up within the individual to compete with his true nature. And the ego is kind of instilled by the collective ego. There's this collective pressure, which is actually, when you think about it, is like a shadow frequency that is all over the world. And the ego, kind of by definition here, is not you. But it pretends to be you. And it will even defend itself as I in your personality. And it's the source, repository of all these fears, guilt, and suffering, and negative beliefs about yourself. These few basic ideas, which are used to install the program that makes up the individual ego, are based on the slander of the person's original wholeness and on the idea of there being no source of help but the institutions of the collective ego. The sole purpose of this program is to split the person off from his connection with the cosmos and tie him to the collective ego through self-doubt and guilt on the one hand, and through striving for fame and glory on the other, to make up for his presumed faults. And this is talking about like the myth of the hero, that you have to become someone or something other than what you are naturally in order to get success, in order to do anything, basically, which is false, by the way. So I hope you can see how these terms are related. The ego, the not self, and the shadow. It's very, very interesting. It's very, very interesting. I prefer the term ego because I believe that this whole definition of the ego is perhaps the most serious thing that we need to deal with, because it is essentially this virus-like program that kind of tries to overwrite your original personality, who you really are, your true self. And it's possible that the ego utilizes your not self. I think it pretty much is the not self, right? In other words, it kind of exploits your open centers, in your human design body graph, and it exploits the shadow frequency to make you feel guilty, to make you feel not sufficient in and of yourself to cope with life, um, to make you feel like you have to strive, to make you feel like working on yourself is hard work, or negative work, you know, to make you feel like you don't have any help from the cosmos, to make you feel like you're all alone. Um, and this is something we really need to realize. Each of us needs to realize that we all do have, unless you're, I don't know, raised by Tibetan monks or something outside of mainstream society, each one of us does have this a component of this individual ego in us, and we often fall prey to it. We fall victim to it. We fall victim to it, and but that this is part of, like, I think, the great change that's coming that Richard Rohr talks about in his 55th gene key, right? That which goes from victimization to freedom. I think that getting free of this ego is a big part of what that's going to look like, what this great change is going to look like. Where we realize finally that we do have the freedom to say no to the ego, to say no to all those negative shadow frequencies, and to stop living in victimization. Whether we are victimized or not, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter because we have freedom. That's the bottom line. We have freedom to say no, and to realize we are all connected to the cosmic consciousness. We are all an integral part of the cosmic consciousness, and we all have a unique self that isn't to be wasted on the ego's games. Um, you know, so yeah, I found that this is very interesting, and hope you did too. And I'll probably talk more about this in the future. But yeah, so see you guys next time.